How does a bastard, orphan, son of a whore and a Scotsman, dropped in the middle of a forgotten spot in the Caribbean?
Wait a minute. That's St. Croix. I'm from that forgotten spot in the Caribbean.
Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god.
Everyone in America has heard of him. Whether you wanted to or not, Lin-Manuel Miranda made sure you heard about the founding father without a father, Alexander Hamilton, in his hit musical, Hamilton. Alexander Hamilton achieved a lot in his lifetime, from establishing America's first national bank to the Reynolds pamphlets to dueling it out with Aaron Burr. But how well do we know that forgotten spot, St. Croix, and his life on the small island? Hey, my name is India, and welcome to another episode of Indy's World. What's his name, man?
Alexander Hamilton!
Before we talk about Hamilton, we gotta take a look at Hamilton's parents. Rachel Fawcett was his mother. She was the child of Upington-born Englishwoman Mary and John Fawcett, a physician and planter with French heritage. In 1745, Rachel traveled to St. Croix with her mother to visit Anne and James Lytton, who operated the Estate Grange sugar plantation just southwest of Christiansted at number 9 Company's Quarter. Now, before I continue, I should give a little context. St. Croix at this time was owned by Denmark along with St. Thomas and St. John. The islands were then called the Danish West Indies. Slavery was prevalent and many Europeans owned plantations on the island. So as soon as Rachel arrived in St. Croix, Mary Fawcett arranged for a then 16-year-old Rachel to marry the much older Johann Michael Levian, who operated a 75-acre cotton plantation at number 12B Company's Quarter. Can you imagine? At 16, I was playing Mario Kart till 3 a.m. and trying not to fall asleep in history class. Being somebody's wife? Psh, I could never. But this was a different time and a completely different St. Croix than it is today. Johann Levian was known to be a cruel person, so, of course, Rachel is not having it. She's like, no way, Jose, I am not doing this. And she jumps up and leaves her husband and the child that they had together named Peter in the early 1750s. So, Johann, being the terrible, horrible, no good, very bad husband he was, petitioned the Danish authorities to have Rachel jailed for her flirtatious behavior and unwillingness to live with him as husband and wife.
Jeez.
And the Danish people looked at that and said, that's totally a good idea.
Totally.
And guess where Rachel spent nearly 8 months in prison? In Christiansted Fort, known as Fort Christiansvern. In May of 1750, Rachel was freed upon her husband's request because he thought that everything would change for the better and that she, as a wedded wife, change her unholy way of life. Well, he had another thing coming, because when Rachel was freed, she hopped on the first ship to Nevis. She was out of here! Good for her, you know? Jeez, I would swim across the ocean with 5 very hungry sharks following me to get away from that guy. Because of that, Rachel was found guilty, forbidden to remarry, and not allowed to make any future claims against her former husband. Wow. However, this did not stop your girl Rachel from meeting somebody new, the father of the man on the $10 bill, James Hamilton. Together, they had 2 children, James Jr., then Alexander Hamilton. In May 1765, James Hamilton, Rachel, and their 2 boys were sent to St. Croix to collect a debt on behalf of his employer. When they stepped off the boat in Christiansted, they entered a small, bustling, cosmopolitan port town that was only 30 years old. Just months after moving to St. Croix, Their father James went to the grocery store to pick up some milk and promised to be back very soon.
Let me play a sad song for you on the world's smallest violin.
Okay. Nah, he didn't pull the milk card, but he did leave Rachel and Alexander Hamilton and his brother James. While there remains to be a lot of speculation about the reason why James left his family, Alexander Hamilton's explanation many years later to his uncle was, "My father's affairs at a very early age went to wreck, so as to have rendered his situation during the greatest part of his life far from eligible. This state of things occasioned a separation between him and me when I was very young, and threw me upon the bounty of my mother's relations, some of whom were then wealthy." Don't worry, guys. Even though James was gone, Rachel did not let his absence stop her.
You go, girl!
Rachel rented a 2-story house and supported her family by operating a small store on the first floor, selling plantation supplies. The shop and residence were located in Christiansted at number 34 Company Street. Unfortunately, the building doesn't stand anymore. But her store sold plantation staples, such as meat, salt fish, flour, rice, and apples, which she purchased from her landlord. The location of Rachel's store and residence was just half a block from the Sunday market, where the slaves would use their free Sundays to sell and trade their goods and wares. Next to Sunday Market was an area called Freegut. This was a place where free slaves resided. Sunday Market and Freegut was an integral part of forming Alexander Hamilton's social and economic ideals. Let's let Eliza Hamilton and George Washington continue the rest of the story.
When he was 10, his father split full of it, debt-ridden. 2 years later, see Alex and his mother bedridden, half dead, sitting in their own sick, the scent thick, and Alex got better, but his mother went quick.
Moved in with a cousin, the cousin committed suicide. Left him with nothing but ruined pride. Something new inside a voice saying, Alex, you gotta fend for yourself. He started retreating and reading every treatise on the shelf.
And Alex did fend for himself in Twin City, or St. Croix. Alexander Hamilton was employed by Nicholas Kruger as a clerk at the neighborhood Import-Export Mercantile Company of Beekman and Kruger when he was 11 years old. While working for Nicholas Kruger and his partner, Alexander put in a lot of effort and acquired valuable experience. Hamilton called his time working as a clerk the most useful part of his education. Alexander spent the majority of his time reading voraciously. Or y'all like that? You like that? I used a big word there. Now tell me what it means, because I don't know. He spent his time reading voraciously, and as a self-educated young man, he later discovered a passion for writing.
In the eye of a hurricane there is quiet for just a moment. The yellow sky. When I was 17, a hurricane destroyed my town. I didn't drown. I couldn't seem to die.
Did you know that hurricane happened in St. Croix? Really? If it wasn't for the hurricane that hit Christiansted, St. Croix on August 31st, 1772, we would not know Alexander Hamilton or the fantastic hit musical like we do today. The hurricane is estimated to have been a Category 3 hurricane. After experiencing the large storm of destruction, Hamilton decided to write a letter to his father recounting the hurricane's characteristics and the misery it left in its path. Here's an excerpt from the famous letter. It seemed as if a total dissolution of nature was taking place. The roaring of the sea and wind, fiery meteors flying about in the air, the prodigious glare of almost perpetual lightning, The crash of the falling houses and the ear-piercing shrieks of the distressed were sufficient to strike astonishment into angels. A great part of the buildings throughout the island are leveled to the ground, almost all the rest very much shattered. Several persons killed and numbers utterly ruined, whole families running about the streets, unknowing where to find a place of shelter. The sick exposed to the keenness of water and air without a bed to lie upon, or a dry covering to their bodies, and our harbors entirely bare. In a word, misery, all its most hideous shapes, spread over the whole face of the country. Did you like my British accent? Yeah, me neither. Like, that's so embarrassing. Anyways, I understand why they wanted Hamilton's letter published in the Royal Danish American Gazette. If it's one thing Alexander Hamilton was good at, was writing, and he wrote with beautifully poetic imagery. Hell, he built palaces out of paragraphs, as his wife Eliza said. Isn't that phrase beautiful?
You built me palaces out of paragraphs. You built cathedrals.
It just sounds so magical to me. Well, magic was definitely on young Alex's side, because when the public read his letter in the newspaper, they were moved to take action. Employers, businessmen, local members of the community, your mom, your mom's cousin, your sister's cousin's friends, dogs, aunts, niece, who believed in Hamilton, took up a collection so that he could educate himself in the United States. Yay! In the autumn of 1772, Alexander Hamilton departed St. Croix and eventually settled in New York just before the Revolutionary War started. And the rest is history. If you are just as curious as I am about Alexander Hamilton's life on this beautiful island, there is actually, drumroll please, an Alexander Hamilton walking tour. Awesome. That's right, folks. You can join Crucian Heritage and Nature Tourism, or CHANT, for a historical walking tour of Alexander Hamilton's Christiansted. The walk begins at the Custom House on the wharf and visits sites linked directly to Alexander Hamilton. You will see places where he lived after the untimely death of his mother and where he worked as a clerk at the warehouse of Beckman and Kruger. Learn about the place that helped shape the man who became a founding father of the United States of America. Well, guys, if you don't know, now you know. St. Croix played an integral part in Hamilton's life before he made it to New York City. As a huge fan of Hamilton the musical and a certified Crucian, it makes me incredibly happy that I can share this with you today. That bell means our time is up. Oh man, I'm gonna miss you guys. But as they say, distance makes the heart grow fonder. So the more I miss you, the more I'll love coming back for the next episode. And I hope you'll love hanging out with me just as much more. I would like to give a special thanks to Carlos, who from day one believed in me and helped me to believe in myself. You're the best. Thank you for listening to Indies World. Bye guys. Today's show was brought to you by the letter C, the inhabitants of Beaver Butt, Alaska, the number 7, and Thing 1 and Thing 2. Today's show also contained the clips and music from Hamilton, C 2020, Lin-Manuel Miranda, and Nevis Productions, LLC, all rights reserved. Indies World, copyright C 2023, India Tardman, all rights reserved.